Kimberly from the Energy Boutique with your Energy and Ascension Forecast for Sunday, May 7th to Saturday, May 13th. So last week we ushered in May, and of course May has its own vibration, its own frequency, and its own set of life lessons that we are really going to be thrown into learning as we unfold the astro events that take place in May. Again, if you haven't listened to May's energy forecast, I would definitely recommend that you go and do that. The very first day of May, of course, we watch Pluto, the great transformer himself, go retrograde in this Aquarian energy, really taking the energy inside. We have to do a deep dive in our psyche, kind of examine some of the shadow realm aspects of self, really see where it is that we've been blocking ourselves with limiting beliefs, with control issues, with self-sabotaging behaviors, with basically what it is that we kind of create within ourselves to prevent ourselves from full stop going after what it is that we want. The moment that we understand what it is we actually desire, the dreams that we actually have, is the same moment that we recognize the fears, the doubts, the insecurities that we have of actually going after getting what it is that we want. And sometimes the scariest thing is actually getting what it is that we set out to get, believe it or not. Well, we are stripping down those fears, those doubts, those insecurities over the next 5 months with Pluto being retrograde. And of course, as I previously mentioned in the astro forecast that I put out, we will be dipping back into that Capricorn energy that we've been sitting in since 2008, that we were all too excited to leave behind back in March when we first entered into this Aquarian energy. And of course, this is going to be a very grand dance, a cha-cha-cha, a tango, if you will, until November of 2024, when we permanently set up shop in this Aquarian energy for good. We also were building towards the full moon lunar eclipse in Scorpio energy that we just had earlier on here today. Of course, if you're listening to me Friday evening and you're here in the chat, first of all, I just want to thank you for being here. But we had the full moon reach its peak energy here at 1:35 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we're still very much in the full moon. We're still very much in the eclipse energy. I'm hoping that you downloaded your moon guide. You have that ready and prepared for tonight's energy and activities. Special reminder, we do not put our crystals out, nor do we want to collect moon water unless you're very experienced in doing so. This is crazy, chaotic type of energy that we do not want to capture in our mystical tools. Now, granted, you're always going to have that handful of people that come out and say, oh no, eclipse energy is great for manifesting. I do not believe that. It all comes down to what you believe in. And of course, I'm not here to tell you what to do. You have to trust yourself. But in my experience, we do not want to really encapsulate this energy. This is more, I'm going to say, of an alignment type of energy, a recalibration type of energy. And if you downloaded your moon guide, you would know that due to the lunar activity that I kind of mentioned in the back of that guide. We don't want to sit in the chaos. We don't want to continue the chaos. We want to align with the energies that we are certain of. We want to understand that we are going through a recalibration and a realignment. Therefore, we're not really up on manifesting. There's too many wild card energies going on right now in order for us to manifest. And of course, Mercury's retrograde as well. So there's a lot more looking back, reworking, redoing, rewriting than there is kind of creating something new. And again, another reason why this Taurus season has been very, very unique and special, because again, normally we're building and creating for the future, and we're just not doing that with eclipse and retrograde energy. So this was also the last week that we are really kind of experiencing Venus being in this Gemini energy that has us kind of divided and on the fence about some things, especially when it comes to our physical realms, our circumstances, our routines, our relationships, our money matters. That Gemini energy has posed two different opportunities, two different ideas, paths, directions that we're just kind of not sure about. We're not really clear on. Don't worry. You're going to have a lot of time and opportunity to figure that stuff out over the next coming of weeks, which brings us into this week. Why do I say that? Well, because Venus is going to move out of that mental plane. She's going to drop into the heart space when she moves into Cancer energy. This is taking place on the 7th. And so from May 7th to June 5th, we are going to have Venus, the goddess of love, beauty, worth, pleasure, money, in Cancer energy, which is highly emotional, super intuitive, and very focused on healing. What are we healing? We're healing inner child wounds. We're healing mother wounds. It's always an interesting time in the calendar where Mother's Day is coming up to have Venus be in Cancer energy, the mother energy of the zodiac. There's usually a lot of, I'm going to say, trauma/healing, growth that takes place around this particular point in the calendar, especially when it aligns in the way that it does. And we're in this kind of emotional, reflective state of being when Venus is in Cancer energy. Not to mention, it just intensifies the reflection back that Mercury in retrograde is doing right now. And of course, eclipse season, throwing these wild card energies at us, really shaking up our physical realms and the path and the direction that we're about to move in and take. Venus moving into Cancer is going to bring up a lot, and it's going to equally trigger as much as we are going to be healing. There's an astro forecast out about that as well. And again, you should have your Taurus season e-guide open and ready to take the notes and encapsulate the energy of the situation and circumstances that you're currently in. Get on that if you haven't gotten on that yet. We still have a little bit to go here in this Taurus season. This week, we are going to be wrapping up the final week of Mercury being retrograde. We will see Mercury go direct on the 14th, 5 degrees in Taurus energy. So we get some retracing of our steps to do. But again, may I remind you, clarity ain't coming at us until we move into June. So don't think that you're just going to wake up and have all the answers and see the strategy, see the path, see all the details laid out before you. It's not going to happen that way. But nonetheless, we are definitely going to be happy to at least get Mercury kind of, I'm going to say, detoxing from his drunken and drug slumber state of in the unconscious realm of our experiences. That's what Mercury retrograde is all about. We're going to be happy to see him wake up. And of course, every day that he wakes up and puts the pieces together and gains a little bit more insight and gets his bearings about him, the more clarity we're actually going to receive. And this is, I'm going to remind you as well, does not mean that eclipse season and eclipse energy is over just because we had our final hurrah here in the full moon lunar eclipse of Scorpio energy. What this means is, yes, the eclipse energy kind of reached its climactic point here again. We are going to see the chaos, the confusion kind of dissipate. But again, we do not officially close the door on eclipse season, on eclipse energy until the new moon in Taurus on May 19th. But we are going to see things kind of start falling into place. Whether we want them to be in that particular spot or not, doesn't really matter. That's not what this is about. This is about, at the beginning of eclipse season, taking that deck of cards and throwing it up in the air. And us watching slowly but surely how they're flipping, how they're flying, where they're going to end up. We are going to start seeing those cards start to fall here over the next couple of weeks. And we will not see very clearly how they are falling into place until, of course, the new moon in Taurus closes the door on the eclipse energy altogether. And then, like I had mentioned, Mercury is still in his post-shadow period up until June 1st. And so it is going to take a couple of weeks to kind of get the lay of the land and see our lives from these new set of eyes and understand the perception and the perspective and the understanding that has been kind of getting pieced together in our unconscious selves that we won't be able to put our finger on until the end of May. So we definitely got a lot going on there as well. So a couple of homework items before I jump into the Ascension symptoms for this week. First of all, I just want to start with a thank you. I want to thank you for being here. Thank you for liking. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for commenting. Thank you for the love that you send my way. Thank you for the support that you constantly show my way as well. Thank you for spending your time, sharing your energy here in the chat with these beautiful people in this beautiful community that we have built. I really appreciate each and every single one of you. So I just want to thank you for that. And as I've been mentioning, this channel is definitely taking a hit I don't know what to do about it, so I am not going to feel as bad or as guilty as I previously did on giving myself some shameless plugs. What do I mean by that? Well, let's start first of all with, have you downloaded your zodiac forecast for the month of May? If the answer is no, please head over to my website to download them individually, or of course you could become a Patreon subscriber and get access to all 12. Those zodiac forecasts are super important to have going into each and every month. It is something that you should be kind of re-listening to as these astro events come up. I go into detail on not only the greater grander lesson that you should be learning every month, but what each individual astro shift means for you and where it shows up into your life. And so I would really encourage you to boss up, to do the work and get in alignment with these energies so that you can create a reality that not only looks good, that feels good as well. Many people have not even listened to the May energy forecast that I put out here on my YouTube channel. A lot of that is because when you post videos, and maybe this isn't something that most people know, but as a creator, you learn that when you post videos on a certain day or a certain time, that they do not get seen at all. And I've noticed myself, any kind of video that I post on the weekend does not get the attention or the views that it normally does or that it deserves. And of course, last weekend, we closed out April. I posted all of the May videos, of course, on the weekend. And according to my numbers, just a fraction of my channel subscribers even got the notification, let alone actually listen to it. So I would really encourage you to go ahead, listen to that May energy forecast, subscribe to that playlist so that every time I release an astro forecast video for the energy shifting here in the month that you get a notification. If YouTube decides to actually honor its function and do what it says it's supposed to do. Most times my subscribers don't get any notifications, full stop, period. Again, just another indication that this platform is crap. And I will take every opportunity that I can to kind of crap on it. And I feel very justified in doing so. It's making me feel better. It's a full moon. I'm a Scorpio. So there. We're going to just sit in the pettiness of my dark side for 2 seconds and just hate on YouTube. So with that being said, did you download your moon guide? It's a very important time. We're closing out a lot of karmic cycles, a lot of karmic chapters with this full moon lunar eclipse in Scorpio energy, with the wild card, unexpected events popping off. No doubt that we are closing the door on some very, very tough love life lessons, and yet opening up a door to a particular life lesson that we haven't even scratched the surface of yet. But one thing at a time, let's just kind of examine what we got going on right now. And what we got going on right now is a true evolution of our soul, of our spirit, which of course includes a true transformation of self. And we do that transformation by examining the shadow self and really bringing it to the surface of our awareness and really analyzing our triggers and activations and what is actually ending and dying and closing in our lives and what is potentially being activated as far as new creation goes. And again, we will not truly understand our eclipse story for, I'm going to say, at least a couple of weeks, but for some of y'all, it's going to take 6 months. And again, a lot of that is because in 6 months from now, we're going to be moving into the last chapter of this Taurus and Scorpio axis in eclipse season in the fall. And then we will be totally done with this Taurus and Scorpio topic and theme. So download your moon guide. And again, the Taurus e-guide is there for you as well. And if you're saying, oh my goodness, Mara, that's a lot for me to go and look for. It's a lot for me to download. It's a lot of money. No, it's actually not. You can jump over to Patreon, be a gold tier subscriber, and get every single ounce of anything that I create all in that subscription. So again, I am working on being able to offer a subscription service right straight from my website for those of you a little bit timid to sign up to Patreon, but it ain't there yet. It's a Mercury retrograde. I'm not a coder. I'm not a back office website designer. So it has taken me some sweet ass time and a lot of headaches in order to figure this stuff out. And so you're going to have to just bear with me on that one. But one thing I do want to talk about, especially where Patreon is concerned, is the astro classes that we're doing here on Wednesdays. So we reached our 9th week in astro class. I want to thank all of y'all who attend those, who kind of chime in and who are enjoying learning a little bit about yourself through the work that we're doing in astro class. And we brought the first 2 months of our basic, I'm going to say, foundational understanding of the birth chart into a full completion session here this past Wednesday. And good reason why I'm talking about this, not only to entice you to come over to Patreon and start learning about yourself and working with the energies in your chart, but we're about to move into the complexities of really exploring the astrology chart and what we can pluck out from that in the next coming of weeks. So you should get the foundational principle understanding under your belt before we dive in to do that. And of course, anytime that you decide to become a Patreon member, you get access to all that content, everything, all the podcasts, all the rants and raves, all the different, guides that I put out. You get access to it all. So I'd really encourage you to come on over, support me over there, learn a little bit about yourself in the process, and it can be a mutual exchange of worth and value for both of us. So with that being said, let's jump into the ascension symptoms. And full disclaimer, full stop. Normally I sit down for about a half hour, 45 minutes-ish, every Friday, and I look over all the astrology for the week ahead, and I make notes, and I sit down and I channel the information coming from my guides on some of the physical aspects that I should be talking about. That's what I normally do. Well, today, again, I am a Scorpio, okay? So I'm going through it. I'm exhausted. My brain doesn't work. I'm not feeling so hot. I honestly, full transparency, would prefer to not be doing this here today. If I could put it off, I would put it off because I do not feel good. I do not feel like I am at my best, and you're not really going to get the best of me. And for that, I absolutely apologize. But I also know that y'all just hold space for me, whether I'm feeling on the top of my game or not. And you know what? My main motto is that it doesn't matter whether you feel good, doesn't matter whether or not you want to do it or not, you got to show up. And so I'm here and I'm looking at a blank page because I did not take any notes, which means that I'm going to wing this, which means that I am full stop channeling in the moment. I am not, taking the time to be strategic. I'm not taking the time to be calculated, because time is something that I would prefer to be curled up on the couch doing right now instead of doing this, but I'm showing up. We're going to do it anyway. So we're just going to wing this. And off the top of my head, the very first thing that I want to talk about is the extremes that we're feeling in our physical body. So of course, we're in Scorpio energy. It's about the extremes anyways. Most of us should be on the darker side of our experience, of our emotions, of our memories, of our narratives, because that's what Scorpio energy is all about. It's about shadow work. And we really have to take the anger, the agitation that many of us have been feeling, and we have to use that as a guideline, as a framework on what it is that we are outgrowing, what it is that we no longer have want, need, and desire to pour into. And because Scorpio energy is focused on desire, we're figuring out what it is that we're no longer desiring to do. And again, a lot of that is just like, you know what? I don't have the energy for this. I don't care enough about it. I don't have the F's to give. And however that shows up in your life, pay attention to it, because that is a true indication on what needs to end, what needs to have like a death, what we need to kind of bring full stop, full circle, if you will. And, you may say, well, geez, some of the things that I feel like I'm done with, I can't be done with. I have a commitment. I have an obligation. Okay, well, that is a great point. Let's reframe it. How can we make it better? Obviously, doing what you've been doing isn't working for you, so how can you spice it up and be different? That's where Venus being in Gemini energy comes in. We need to sort it out in the mental plane. If this isn't working for you, okay, come up with an alternative. What would be better? What's the alternative in its place? Okay, so I understand that your ultimate answer would be, I don't want to do this anymore. I just want to be done. Okay, well, great. If you have the opportunity to do that, make that happen. But for many of us, we're still stuck in jobs, in relationships, in physical environments that we can't just, up and walk away from. And if you are finding that those particular dark shadow aspects of yourself are showing up in that manner in situations that you can't just walk away from, then again, what can you change? What can you transform? What can you kind of spice up to make it a different thing? And I know this is a very basic analogy, but I talk about it a lot and it seems to work. The way you go about cleaning your house, there's a certain routine. You know, you might start with the dishes first, or start with the counters first, or do the laundry or whatever. But either way, there's a system, there's a routine to it. And when I say to people, when you get stuck, when you get stagnant, when you're uncertain on what it is that you need to be doing, do your whole cleaning routine backwards. You want to believe that just mixing up your day-to-day routines and doing things a little bit ass backwards is enough to kind of mix up the energy and bring you back into the present moment. Because when you are moving through the habitual routines in life, you're on autopilot. You are not present. You're thinking about other things. So the best thing that you can do to get out of the funk, to get out of your mind space, is to become present. And the best way to do that is to go against the grain of their natural habits, your natural routines. And it's a great time to be examining those particular things with Pluto, the ruler of this Scorpio full moon lunar eclipse. May I remind you, Pluto is retrograde. He's doing a deep dive in the, I'm going to say, inner workings of our brain. I want to talk about the brain for a second. Neuroplasticity is a thing that you need to be looking into. And neuroplasticity is basically the overwriting of the neurons that have created certain patterns in your brain. And so you often hear me say, okay, well, we have to examine that condition. We have to examine that pattern. We have to rewrite that particular narrative. And one would say, well, how do you do that? Well, first, you become aware of it. Second, you understand that it isn't working for you. Third, you come up with an alternative that would be better in its place. And then fourthly, you actually practice it. Okay, you have to practice it. What does that mean? It means, let's take a very basic concept like the negative narrative. Let's say so many people right now are struggling with self-confidence, self-worth. Let's just say that the inner narrative that you have is, I'm not good enough to do that. I'll never be that. Okay, let's just take that little bit of a sentence there. Okay, so first of all, we have to become aware of it. We did that. That's step number one. Number two, well, let's dive into that. Why do I feel that way? Where does that actually come from? How far back can I trace it into my childhood conditioning? Where was I never feeling good enough or capable enough? Or who told me that I was never good enough or that I couldn't do it? Where did this narrative come from? Again, examining the primary root cause is essential in understanding where this neural pathway actually got birthed in your brain in the first place. Then we're going to take a good look at, okay, every single time that particular narrative enters into my head, what do I want to change it up with? So we always want to kind of, take that, I'm going to say, destructive, unsupportive narrative, you want to flip it into something empowering. So, okay, I don't think I'm going to be able to do that. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. Whatever the narrative is for you, we're going to switch it up. And sometimes you got to fake it till you make it. Okay, so we're just going to say, I'm not feeling as prepared for this particular challenge as I would like to be. I am not as confident that I have the perspective, understanding, skill set that I need to be successful in this particular endeavor, which means that I'm going to have to do this, and this in order to build up my confidence, in order to build up my self-esteem, in order to feel prepared. So what we're doing is we're flipping the script on I'm not good enough, I'll never be able to do this, I'm not going to be successful. We're identifying why it is that we don't feel good enough, why we don't feel like we'll be successful, and we're coming up with a solution on what it is that we can do to kind of up ourselves in confidence, whether it be educating ourselves in skills and talents or whatever the case may be. We're coming up with a solution. And every single time we find ourselves in that pattern, in that narrative, kind of creeping in our mind space, which is the shadow realm aspect of our egoic self, we're going to nip it in the bud. We're going to, either in your head or out loud, you're going to say, delete, okay, because we're deleting that, and we're going to pretend like we are typing in a coding program in software, and we're going to say, override with, I'm not feeling confident because I do not feel I'm going to be successful because, and here's what I need to do in order to get myself to the point where I feel prepared in order to try it. And when we kind of inject that particular topic and theme, that perspective, that narrative into our brain, there is an electrical situation going on in our brain where we essentially break that neural pathway of the lack of self-worth, self-confidence. We are watching it kind of fire in confusion because this is new, doesn't know where to go. And then the more times that we tell ourselves in that repetitive, supportive, and encouraging narrative that this is why I feel this way, here's what I can do to feel better, we are building a new bridge, a new path in our brain. And that is neurolinguistics, that is neuroplasticity. You have to change the way that you speak to yourself, the way that you perceive the world, the narrative inside of your head in order to create new brain patterns. It's a science. It's not woo-woo. It's an actual thing. I encourage you to look it up. The mind is the most powerful tool that we have, which means that it is also the greatest enemy that we could ever make out of ourselves. And so therefore, to have the power and the understanding over the brain and how it works is number one to being successful on not creating these limiting beliefs for ourselves. And of course, examining the ones that are there, breaking them, and building something better in its place. So the brain is a beautiful thing. It's electrical in nature. We have some rewriting to do, some overwriting to do of those old programs, of those old conditions. And Pluto, again, very intense, very powerful at this time in a retrograde in the rulership of this full moon, fully illuminating where it is that we have to change some things. And a lot of those changes, as you'll hear me say, needs to start in the head space first, the heart space second, getting those in alignment before we can engage the physical body to take action and make moves to replicate out in our external realm where it is that we've already arrived in the vision, in the dream, in the understanding in our inner realm. So it all starts there. I need to go back to the extremes for a little second here. So we've been feeling the extremes, and like I said, most of us in the darker side of things. I don't want to eliminate, I had somebody comment on one of my videos here this week. They gave me all the love. It wasn't a negative thing. It wasn't an attack. It was just a simple perspective of, hey, like everything seems to be dark and dreary and everything seems to be a shit show. Like where are the positives? Where's the light? And, my answer to that, as many of you know, and has listened to me long enough, I'm kind of blunt and to the point, and I'm very much a realist in what I'm saying here, but we have to create the good parts because the good parts aren't very fluent. We're not in a time right now where there should be a whole lot of good, and I mean that in the nicest way. The evolution of our consciousness, the evolution of humanity, we're in a death and destruction period right now. We're not really in a birthing and building period. And even still in the birthing and building period, that's not fun either. The fun part comes after you've built something, after you've kind of created something where it's stable enough to actually enjoy the fruits of your labor. And there are very few people that are in that particular situation as of right now. Now, that doesn't mean that there's nothing good happening. It just means that you have to work harder to create the good. It's not naturally and organically flowing into our lives right now. Most of the energies that we're dealing with is very extreme. We're in an extreme point of evolution. We're in an extreme point of the evolution of our consciousness, of humanity, of the possibilities for us in the future. Look at all the people in the negative fear-based narrative that focuses in on the world events. And again, if you take a look around at the world is shit. The world is dark. Did it just get to shit? Did it just get dark? No, it's always been like that. It's just our level of awareness and consciousness have illuminated something that has always been in our faces that we weren't able to see. It's like caterpillars speak in butterfly language. You're not going to hear it. You're not going to see it. And then you have this whole other group of beings that are still in the same world, still seeing the same things, that aren't in fear, that aren't in doubt, that aren't in insecurities, that are looking at the not so nice parts of the world and saying, you know what? We created that. We're illuminating that right now. We're transforming it. We're alchemizing it. And what we're doing is we're trying to build new earth. And that new earth is built on love and peace and harmony and unity. And it's not a delusion. It is a vision that, collectively speaking, more and more of us are coming online to pour into, which means that the probability of having a positive outcome for humanity, for the collective consciousness, is growing exponentially every single time, every single day that a light worker has an epiphany and we realize that the darkness has always been there, that man created that, and that we have the ability to flip that switch, to flip the storyline, to flip the soul contract, and to create something beautiful out of something very dark. And as we explored last week, darkness is beautiful. Okay, so many people have a negative connotation when we talk about darkness, when we talk about shadow, when we talk about the quote unquote negative or bad. It is only in that state of existence because good and light and love exists. And so you see the division, you see the extremes going on in consciousness, in evolution, in humanity, in world events. You see the extreme polarization of the ego world versus the spiritual world. You see all of these extremes in your every single day life, and where it is that you choose to put yourself on the game board or on the playing field here is all up to your brain, all up to your perspective, your perception, your understanding, what it is that you choose to believe in, what it is that you choose to kind of create space in your mind. It all starts with the mind. It's all about vision. And it's a beautiful thing to understand that we all live in the same construct, and yet there can be so many different perspectives, perceptions, and understandings. And that all comes down to your vibration and frequency. So the extremes are very important. We came to Earth to live this polarized, dualistic, extreme type of experience. Again, may I remind you that we come to Earth to be messy. We come to Earth to feel the darkness, to feel the pain, to feel the trauma, feel the suffering. We wanted to continuously live in a state of unconditional love and bliss. We would have stayed as a source entity instead of taking on a physical meat suit. So we're here for it. You may as well lean into it. But the extremes that you're being kind of positioned between right now are very important in order for you to choose what it is that you want to create, or the situation, the energy, the circumstances that have been dealt to you. And again, when we're talking about the physical symptoms here, there's an extreme going on in our physical bodies. You're either extremely tired or extremely manic. You're either at extreme peace or extreme anxiety. You are either extremely hopeful or extremely upset and kind of see the world as a detriment. You are extremely happy or extremely sad. You are extremely fear-based or extremely positive. And let me just say that the agitation, the frustration is coming up in whatever extreme that you're living in order to show you where it is that you are still bothered by the extreme polarization of what could be versus what it is that you're choosing to stand in. So this week, because Venus is on the move, of course, we do have to kind of expect that there's going to be a lot of heart activations take place. Now, let me remind you, heart activations can manifest in a couple of different ways. You might just have an extreme weight on your chest, feeling like you can't breathe. You might have indigestion. You might have a rapid heartbeat. Maybe your heart is skipping a beat. Maybe it's an irregular heartbeat pattern. Maybe you have a pain in your back, in your shoulder blade. Maybe it's in your neck. Regardless, it encompasses the heart chakra. Now, because we're moving into Cancer energy, things are going to get a little bit mushy, a little bit ooey and gooey, a little bit sentimental and nostalgic, all up in our heart space. Because this energy is being intensified by eclipse season, by retrograde season, we are definitely going to be all up in our feels. We are going to feel discombobulated in our inner realms, and the want, need, and desire for safety, security, and stability is going to illuminate where it is that we're not getting those particular things in our lives, which should illuminate us on what needs to stay, what needs to go. The hard part about it is that Cancer energy is overly attached to the past, to people, places, ideas, and things, and has a hard time letting go, even though holding on is literally burning through our hands. And it is a very difficult time to see where it is that we have to let certain elements go in order for us to grow. And that's what the whole point of, going through some of these energetic events are meant to actually teach us what it is that we have to let go of in order to grow into something new. So the fact that we will be having those heart activations, I just want to continue to remind you that the air bubble up underneath our ribs is likely going to be there for a little bit longer, but not as intense. It will be moving. We will be able to kind of get that gassy bubble out one way or another. We can move it around now. Over the last couple of days, or I should say weeks, it has felt like it is just something that wasn't diminishing at all. Like we couldn't move it. It wasn't fluid to move. It was kind of like locked into one place. Well, things are going to start moving now. And with that movement, not only in our solar plexus, but you're going to be feeling that movement in your digestion as well. And let me also just say that when Venus moves into Cancer energy tends to rule over the chest, the breast, the motherly parts of our bosom, holding things close to our heart space, if you will. But also because it's highly emotional and because it's a little bit choppy, we're going to see a lot of water weight. We're also going to see a lot of digestive issues. We've been dealing with the digestive issues for quite some time, and we will continue because, of course, there's more nerve endings in our digestive system than anywhere else. And the nervous system is kind of our, I'm going to say, compass to this earthly realm, an experience, if you will. And so we do have to kind of expect that our digestion is going to start moving in different ways than we've been used to as well. There's going to be a lot of bloating taking place in our digestive systems as well, a lot of weight in our lower extremities. Now, the bladder, the bowels are likely going to be puffed up and inflamed, holding on to crap literally from our pasts, if you want to get technical about it. And so we are going to have to kind of push ourselves to get back on track. A lot of the topics and themes that are going to come full stop in our faces while Venus is in Cancer is where we have to take better care of ourselves. Where we have to build a new routine, a new foundation, a new structure on how it is that we move through our day-to-day life, addressing what it is that we need, mind, body, and soul, and the different outlets that we need to really put a huge emphasis on making sure is a part of our day-to-day so that we aren't holding on to this energy and allowing it to manifest as dis-ease in our physical bodies as well. So that's going to kind of play into Venus moving into Cancer energy. And then with this being Mercury's kind of last week to be retrograde, there is going to be a lot of head pressure as well. And when we want to talk about extremes, we want to talk about the fact that these signs and symptoms are seemingly happening on one side of the body over the other, which we often talk about is very indicative on the process, the procedure that you're currently going through, where old memories are coming up from the past. We usually see that happening on the backside of our bodies. The anticipation, anxiety, or nervousness that we have to move forward in a future motion usually comes from the front of the body. And of course, left versus right is emotional and intuition versus survival and physical. So we have to pay attention to that. The congestion, I feel, is going to kind of come back up, whether it's phlegm. And again, let's be careful with what we're doing here. Venus being in Cancer energy, kind of ruling over the heart space, the chest area. We do have to understand that we could have coughing fits where just like old balls of phlegm decide that they want to work themselves out. Congestion in the head, of course, because of Mercury being retrograde. I, for one, actually have one nostril that refuses to open up and be kind and let some air in. So I'm solely dependent on the other nostril for my breathing purposes at this particular time. And it's just, we have to expect the ebb and flow. We're moving into another water energy. So there is there's a lot of congestion coming up. Speaking of that, in the Moon Guide, if you downloaded it, you will know that the elemental energy that we're currently in is kind of even between earth and water. And as we've kind of talked about, when there's too much emotion, we can erode some structures and routines and circumstances in our physical realm that is represented by earth. When we strike a balance between earth and water, we have the ability to grow something. You know, if you constantly water the earth, some seeds pop through and you essentially grow something. Too much water, you're going to drown it. Too much earth, it's not going to have the moisture content or the emotional or intuitive spiritual nature, if you will, in order for growth to actually take place. We're still very much in this elemental profile, so we want to pay attention, especially as Venus moves into Cancer, adding to the water elements. It's definitely going to be emotional in nature. And, you know, where Venus, of course, rules over this Taurus season that we're in, there's a major focus on our physical realms where routines and relationships and money matters have been already created, already brought to life. There's an emotional erosion going on, picking away at whether or not we want those particular structures and foundations to continue to be the same in our lives. So we will be kind of seeing the fallout or the fall apart or the fall away of some of those particular dynamics as we kind of close Taurus season out, eclipse season out, retrograde season out. We really are in alignment with that heart space, with Venus being in that Cancer energy. Very intuitive, very emotional, very protective and defensive of some of the things that we're sure of and some of the things that we've already brought to life and created. But you best believe we have no problem disconnecting and detaching emotionally from the things that we are uncertain of and unsure of. Back to the physical body. So we are kind of, I use the snow globe analogy when we talk about eclipse season and retrograde season, because essentially, you know, somebody picks up the little earth that we're living in and shakes us real good. This is why we're disoriented, discombobulated. This is why there's wild card energies. This is why there's unexpected events that hit us right now. This is why we're kind of being opened up to new soul contracts, new storylines, new timelines. We won't know how the cards are going to fall, like I mentioned, until June. But the snow globe effect, you know, when you shake it real good and it's like you can't even see inside the snow globe, and then you set it down and eventually like the stirring kind of slows down and the tornado tunnel effect kind of slows down, and then you kind of have this graceful period where it's just like kind of natural and pretty. That's the phase that we're about to move into now, but we're still needing to be in observer mode and not really push our mental plane to try and make sense of things, because again, it's just not going to make sense for some weeks to come here. But we're starting to kind of see where the cards are falling and what that's going to mean for us. And a lot of us are experiencing it on the negative side, meaning a lot of things are falling apart and falling away that we wish we weren't witnessing right now. We don't really want these experiences. We are disappointed in a lot of ways. But let me just remind you that eclipse season feels like a punishment. It feels like bad things are happening. And we don't realize until many moons to come, when we look back on it, that it's actually a blessing in disguise. And I know for some of y'all out there that have, you know, shared some of the shit shows, circumstances, and scenarios that have popped off for you in eclipse season, it really is hard to try and pluck out those silver linings and to understand where, you know, all of this is going to provide a new path, a new meaning, a new purpose, and really put us in a situation where we're able to appreciate these things. But we got to trust the process. And right now the process doesn't make sense, and we're a little bit angry at the process, and that's okay. Acknowledge those darker parts of yourself. That's what this full moon in Scorpio lunar eclipse is all about. But we are going to be moving into a very interesting observing type of pattern. And again, it's important to not react. We want to observe. We want to, you know, just kind of see where the life lessons are at and where the domino effects are falling. But in our physical bodies, we kind of have that butterfly feeling in our stomach, but we don't know if the butterflies are going to eat us alive from the inside out or whether we are going to give birth to the butterflies. We're not really sure of that. There's a lot of stomach upset. I know we talked about digestive issues, but there's a lot of nausea. There's a lot of stomach upset because we don't know what to make of it. We don't know whether we're going to puke or shit ourselves. And I know that sounds just absolutely disgusting, but that is the human form. That is the human body. And we are disgusting meat suits, my friends. So let's just get real with some of the bodily functions that we wish weren't so. And being nervous and anticipating the ball dropping and, wild card energies coming at us puts our stomachs in a tizzy, and we just don't know which way it's going to go. Again, very extreme. I want to talk about the hands for a second. As we've been exploring over the last little bit, anytime that we're having issues with our hands, it is I'm going to say an attack on the palm chakra's awakening. So when we talk about, jamming your finger in a door, or we talk about stabbing yourself in your hand, or we talk about breaking nails or hangnails, or any kind of hand issues, we're talking about a blockage in the palm chakra. Just understand that there is a energy flow that takes place in our palm chakras. First of all, they need to be open and activated in order to do any kind of thing. But the left hand, typically speaking, is receptive in receiving energies from the world around us. The right hand is assertive in kind of pushing the energies out of our body and impacting the world around us with our particular energy. So depending on A, the injuries that you're currently sustaining to your hands, and B, what hand is actually being affected most, that is a super good indicator on where it is that some of the blockages are in your physical body, in your ability to take control, to assert yourself, to make things happen for yourself, and where it is that maybe you are too open in the left side of your body and too open to receiving energies around you. And of course, that brings us to topics and themes about boundaries. We got Pluto in a retrograde in Aquarius energy working on boundaries. We're going to have Venus in Cancer energy working on boundaries as well. So we want to kind of understand where the energetic boundaries are being kind of cluster effed and distorted in our physical bodies, and where in our circumstances that is manifesting as well. Because again, anything that's happening outside of us is merely acting as a reflective mirror on what is going on in the inside. I want to talk about this neck pain for a second, and it seems, again, to be extreme on one side or the other, and it kind of clips into that bulge at the base or the top of the spine, the base of the neck. So we're having a problem right now because, as you know, the 33 vertebrae in your spine, Jacob's ladder, is all the different levels that our, I'm going to say, magical fluids, our holy secretions have to travel up and down through our monthly cycle of activations and creation in order to actually reach the pineal gland, which gives us this like biological explosion of chemicals in our brain, which opens us up to new perspectives and understandings, and of course levels up our consciousness and awareness. Well, we're in eclipse season. We can't see the future if our life depended on it. We certainly don't feel good about some of the things that are currently going on, which means that all of that energy is kind of getting trapped at the top of the spine, not moving into the head, not activating that pineal gland, and therefore just kind of pinging off of that very last vertebrae where our spine turns into our neck. And so we want to examine, first of all, what we can do to kind of get the energy flowing. We want to examine what side it's taking place on, because again, that is a very good indicator on whether we're struggling with survival issues, mental health issues, emotional issues, karmic issues, spiritual issues. All of that can be determined from left, from right, from front versus back. But realistically, we're bearing a lot of weight on our shoulders right now. And a lot of this is due to the guilt that we have about terminating some of the old relationships, the old commitments, the old obligations that we have identified we are leaving behind in order to pursue new happiness, new security, new projects, new endeavors. And so there's a lot of pressure going on, and our head is essentially disconnected from our body. And our head space, Mercury, of course, in a retrograde, he's kind of floating around disconnected in the realm of unconsciousness at the moment. So it does make sense that we're not operating as a whole state. And again, eclipse season, retrograde season, it's about realignment, recalibrating. I want to talk about the temperature fluctuations and the wave of goosebumps that will continue into this week, because we are going through this recalibration, this realignment. Those changes in temperature, that fluctuation in goosebumps is an indicator on where the energy blockages are being kind of pushed through the meridian channels in your physical body. And one thing I also want to kind of bring to your attention is that there is going to be, because we are kind of water dominant here, there is a lot of puffiness, a lot of inflammation, and this is triggering a lot of old wounds. A lot, maybe you broke your leg when you were 10. Well, those particular aches and pains are coming back up in your leg again. Why? Well, for a couple of reasons. First of all, to try and heal that particular memory, that wound, that trauma on all different levels of your physical being. But another thing, just to show you how far it is that you've grown, how much you've healed, how far you've come. And again, we're in this wackadoodle position right now where we're looking back, we come back into the present moment with a new understanding. And then we're standing in the present moment, we're projecting ourselves into the future with the possibilities of the information that we just kind of accumulated by looking back. And suddenly the change in direction, the change in path, is being illuminated for us. Every single time we're able to acknowledge something from our past and see it from a different perspective, it alters who it is that we are in this present moment, and it alters what is possible for us in moving forward. So I want you to pay attention to where the back and forth, where the ebb and flow, where the tug of war is taking place, especially in your physical body, because that's just an indicator of where it's manifesting in your energetic body as well. I'm going to say, I want you to pay attention to your throat, to your mouth, to your tongue, whether there's any injuries there, any kind of pressure there, any kind of attention being asked for there, mostly because we are starting to put together and formulate what it is that we want to say, where it is that we want to go, what it is that we want to take action on. Because of that, our throat chakras are becoming activated again, especially when Mercury goes direct. Not only is our head going to wake up and we're going to gain some clarity, but we're actually going to be able to speak on some of the things that we're still trying to marinate and formulate within ourselves. And so that throat chakra is getting a little bit agitated. You might have an itchy throat. It might be like you're trying to swallow your tongue, basically, to itch that itch at the back of your throat. We're going to see the vibration, the tone of our voice actually change as well, because again, we're in a recalibration, a realignment. And because all of this is kind of taking place in our physical bodies and our sensory experiences, the constant changes that we've been going through with our eyes, the sun is too bright, the flashes of light are becoming more and more intense. We are seeing sparkles in our peripherals. All of those sensory experiences are going to be kind of changing as well, locking in the new programming that we will be stabilizing and anchoring into our physical bodies and our physical experiences as we move forward. I'm going to say the ear rigging, the ear pitches are changing as well. Those are still very much downloads from the higher sources of intelligence here, but they're changing. They're of a different frequency now. It's because we've reached a new level of consciousness, not only within our own individual path, but within humanity. We've locked in a new level, basically. And so we have to kind of understand that the way that we bring information in from our five senses, and again, we're still in Taurus season. Taurus season is about the five senses, our physical experiences, and we are recognizing how we're bringing information in differently, how it is that our environment maybe necessarily hasn't changed as such, but we see that it has changed. It has an energetic change to it or a vibrational change to it. Everything is going to feel different. Everything is going to feel, to a certain extent, like it's brand new in a way. And most of that is because we are seeing the same old from a new set of eyes. And again, that is just changing the way that we bring information in. The other thing that I want to talk about is cold feet. Now that cold feet, that's happening because we are kind of being brought to a choice point, an opportunity to choose a new timeline, path, direction. And as eager beavers as some of us may be to get started in initiating a new timeline, new soul contracts, we still are having a lot of hesitancy because the clarity isn't there. A lot of us are just taking a leap of faith right now, trusting the process, knowing that as long as we push ourselves forward, we push ourselves to grow, that those answers, that clarity will be bestowed upon us when we kind of free up the space to let the universe know that, hey, it's not really making much sense to me right now, but I'm going to go ahead and trust my gut and trust you. And I know that you're going to sort things out. And I know that you're going to provide that information, that clarity for me when you see that I'm serious about the path that I'm going to pursue. Let me remind you, we are not in a time of action. We are in a time of either completing the actions that we have to complete in order to close the door on this chapter, or we're thinking about the actions that we have to take when we're being supported and actually taking action. But I have so many people say to me on a daily basis, like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Nothing's changing in my life. I don't know what I'm doing, blah, blah, blah. Well, you're not supposed to. So let's not be so hard on ourselves, okay? Let's just relax. The point is to be in the moment, to be aware, to be real and raw and authentic and vulnerable, to act as the observer, to just simply be. And that's a hard task for a lot of people to do. Otherwise, most people would be doing it. Instead, we are in this kind of hustle culture where we constantly have to be doing something in order to feel worthy of being alive and deserving and worthy of any kind of anything good. And this hustle culture is really breaking us, people. And this is why I say, do the deep dive in your brain, really learn about neuroplasticity and flip the script in your programming so that you can find peace and harmony in just existing, in just being. So guys, I think that's all that I'm going to talk about. I know I probably didn't dive into some of the physical symptoms of the energy that's going to be thrown at us. But hey, I freestyled it. I flew by the seat of my pants. I think we did all right. I think we covered the basics of it all. Again, we're kind of in this unwinding situation. So a lot of the physical symptoms that we've been experiencing through eclipse season are still very much going to linger and stick around until we close the door on this particular energetic portal. And for those of you wondering why I went this whole forecast without talking about the 5-5 portal, it's because it doesn't matter. It doesn't even exist. I hate to burst your bubble. If you want to throw your energy into believing that it's some kind of magnificent day because the calendar that we got lied about tells us that it's 5-5, all the power to you. But I am just getting to the point where I'm not even wanting to address it, to talk about it. If for some reason, because of the other posts that show up on your feed from other astrologers or other light workers, if for some reason those types of topics and themes excite you and then you sit around and listen to my content around these particular days and wonder why I don't mention it, it's because it doesn't exist to me. It's because it doesn't matter to me. It's because it is non-existent with the energy that we're trying to talk about. So I have had so many people ask me about the significance of this full moon lunar eclipse in Scorpio taking place on the 5-5 portal. And I just brush it off. 5-5 has nothing to do with anything. So just trust that, you know what, you're exactly where it is that you need to be. Sit back, act as the observer, take note of the physical changes that are kind of being illuminated in your physical body, make the connection to some of the circumstances that are currently, on your mind and in your face that are demanding growth and change, and piece it together. It's all connected. It all will make sense when we're able to look back on it, because 2020 hindsight is just a beautiful thing, but we're not there yet. So I recommend, instead of racking the beautiful brain of yours, try and figure it out, that you just exist, that you just be, and that you let that clarity and those answers flow to you when you're meant to know it. So guys, I want to thank you so much for tuning in. I want to thank you so much for the love. I want to thank you for showing up for me, but I mostly want to thank you for showing up for yourself. Do the work, stay in your power, stay in alignment. I'm sending you nothing but love, and we'll talk to you soon.